What's happening, y'all? As usual, it's your boy P double one half for the Bootleg Cable Podcast. And I came across some commentary by a young man, or I don't want to say young man, it's a man by the name of Showbiz the Adult, right? And his commentary was about Keith Thurman and Pacquiao, and if Pacquiao were to face Keith Thurman, he would consider Pacquiao a greater fighter than he does Floyd Mayweather. During the commentary, he went on to say that he is a bigger fan of Floyd's boxing style than he is of Manny's. And he also went on to say things about who Floyd chose to fight and when he chose to fight him. So he said when Floyd fought Berto, basically Keith Thurman was there in the running, and pretty much if he was a warrior, he would have fought Keith Thurman instead of fighting Berto. And I agree. Like, he could have fought Thurman instead of Berto, right? But if you think back, the whole Berto versus Floyd thing, it was a match that was in the making for a long time. They had wanted to fight each other, or Berto had wanted to fight Floyd for a long time. Somebody in the comments brought up that Floyd had chosen to fight Canelo when Canelo was one of the young lions coming up, and I think at the time it might have been like a 10-year age difference. Don't quote me on that, or it might have been a little bit more. But at the time, Canelo was a young up-and-coming young lion, and people had predicted that Canelo would have knocked out Floyd and X, Y, and Z, and we all know what happened with that fight. So I'm not making this video to defend Floyd or anything like that, or to go against Manny, because Manny is a great fighter in his own right, legendary fighter in his own right, probably one of the best fighters of all time, right? I want to kind of focus on Keith Thurman here, right? I don't remember exactly all of Keith Thurman's last few opponents. I know he had a tough time against Shawn Porter, and most of y'all would say that, yeah, when he fought Porter, he was pretty much going through injury. I know he had something that was going on with his elbow, and he might have had something that was going on with his shoulder at the time. Don't quote me. But he's been gone for about 2 years. He barely got past Porter, and Porter is a very game. I feel like Porter is a dangerous fight for anybody in the welterweight class right now. So whoever chooses to take on Shawn Porter, automatically that person is a warrior, right? But back to Thurman. Thurman came back from a 3-year layoff to fight Josecito Lopez. I thought that fight for him should have been one of his easiest fights. And again, that's not to put any disrespect to Josecito Lopez, but I don't see him as a great fighter. He's pretty much a journeyman, and he'll beat, some middle of the class welterweights or whatever. You know what I'm saying? He's one of those. He's a tune-up fight, and that's exactly what this was for Thurman. Thurman, throughout the first 6 rounds, was handling Lopez easily. But I think that he had gotten too cocky in his mind, and he let up and damn near got his ass knocked out in the 7th round. I think it was the 7th round. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think that he let off the gas, and he was feeling himself, because Thurman is a real cocky dude. And Thurman is at the point of his career right now where he can pick and choose fights. The same way Floyd Mayweather, whether we like it or not, picked and choose fights. It was a time where when Floyd was a young lion, and he was coming up and he was trying to get to fight the Oscar de la Hoyas. He was trying to fight the Mosleys when the Oscar de la Hoyas and the Mosleys was on top, and they didn't want to give him those fights. So it's the same thing when he becomes the top dog. He says, like, all right, I'm going to do what people did to me. And it's not right. It's not right at all. I'm not trying to defend it. But he did that. He picked and chose his fights, and some people could say, yeah, he chose the people that he knew he could beat. All right, cool. But for the guy, I forgot his name already. Sorry, the adult. for him to comment and say that if Manny were to fight Thurman, that would make him greater than Floyd, is giving Thurman too much props, if you ask me. Because, like, I think of Thurman, right? And I think of who was his signature wins against? Who did he really, really beat for you to say, yo, that was like a great win for Thurman, and this is what put this dude on top, or whatever, whatever. And I guess you could say the same thing about Crawford and Errol Spence, but I think if Thurman were to fight Crawford or Errol Spence at any time this year, Spence or Crawford would beat the brakes off of Thurman. I guarantee it. If he fights any one of those two guys anytime this year, he's taking a loss on his record. So I guarantee that in any time for the rest of the year, Thurman will not fight either Crawford or Errol Spence. He gonna try to fight them maybe sometime next year, or he gonna try to put it off for as long as he could. But this year, he will not fight either of those two dudes. The whole rematch between him and Sean Porter, I think that him and Sean Porter fought, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think they did fight. So he might try to go for a rematch between him and Sean Porter. And I think that if he fights Sean Porter on his next fight, Sean Porter will beat him. So I don't understand where the so much props goes to Keith Thurman. You know, maybe I should have looked at a couple of different, his last couple of opponents. But if my mind serves me correctly, Keith Thurman, to me, didn't have that impressive win for me to put him at the top of the class the way that people say he is, right? So when I think about certain fighters, for example, let's say Andre Ward, right? I think Andre Ward retired at the perfect time in his career because I think that he beat I think Kovalev beat him in their first fight, right? But Andre Ward, when he was at his best, to me, layoff, no layoff, whatever it was, pretty much you had Andre Ward like, yo, that dude is going to beat whoever you put in front of him. And I think that was, Andre Ward really, really got on my radar after he had won, I think it was called the Super 8 tournament or the Super 6 or whatever. But Andre Ward was one of those fighters at the time when it was like he on top of his game. It's no way that nobody's beating this cat right now, especially after he beat Chad Dawson. And Chad Dawson, some people might say Chad was on a decline when he fought Ward or whatever the case is. But still, back to Keith Thurman. I think that there's overhype with Keith Thurman right now. I think that people is putting Keith Thurman a lot higher than he needs to be put. And I feel like any of the top welterweights right now, they beat Keith Thurman. And I feel like even if Keith Thurman fights Pacquiao in his very next fight, which if he's a smart man, he not going to do it, Pacquiao beats Keith Thurman in his next fight. Because Thurman is going to try to stick and move, and that's not going to work against Pacquiao. That kind of fight is not going to work right now against Pacquiao from what I've seen against Josecito Lopez. And we all know that Pacquiao packed way more of a punch than Lopez, even though I think it was Lopez that had broke Victor Ortiz's jaw a couple of years ago. And Victor Ortiz, that's a whole nother story. But y'all tell me what y'all think, man. Do y'all think that Keith Thurman is really, really... Like, when we talk about top welterweights, we talking about Crawford. We talk about Crawford, and we talking about Errol Spence Jr., right? Do you think anybody out there is better than those two guys right now in the welterweight division? And do y'all think that Keith Thurman beats any one of those two guys this year? So, like, let's just say if Thurman was to say, all right, let me go ahead and get a quick fight within the next 3 months, another tune-up fight, and let's just say he'll have 3 fights this year, with his third fight being against Thurman against Errol Spence or Crawford, do y'all think he beats one of those two? Let me know, man.